All right, this is the little coda, little thing at the end, just if you're curious. And I think the second slide will be of more use to you in answering the antiviral question if you get that one on the exam. So, if you're interested in a timeline, here's a nice timeline. And I've put the link to the paper in the to do list for the week. So you can see our first, FDA approvals. That's our the blue lines over here. Is for zidovudine, which is another name for AZT. And it tells you here it is an NRTI, nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitor, and it tells you who made it, which is GlaxoSmithKline, and it says that it has another name which is also called Retrovir. Which it was the first antiretroviral drug. And so there it is. And you can see them coming pretty regularly, and really this is a lot of progress. I think especially when you compare it to every other virus in the world. So everything else is shown here in black coming off the other side. And you got ribavirin, great. You got acyclovir, great. And then you got a bunch of things that are related to acyclovir. Valacyclovir and ganciclovir being those. And you got just a couple other things made. So this is the way it was for a long time. So you had a lot of options for treating HIV. Not so many options for treating literally everything else. Because remember, pretty much every virus requires a separate solution. There are a few of these drugs that will inhibit more than one virus, but that is the minority. The majority are one virus therapies, or at least one group of viruses, maybe genus or family if you're really lucky. So, yeah. And this review's a little older. Progress has certainly continued there. And we've added a couple new ones down here at the bottom. Some of those being the new anti-COVID medications. All right. So, this one I think is going to be of some use to you. So this is looking at, from a drug point of view, when can I put this drug on and still get an effect? And so this is measuring the percentage of effect. And this is in hours after infection. And so you can see that for something like T20, which remember is also called enfuvirtide or Fusion, this is the one that is heptad repeat 2, but don't tell anybody. You can see that this one is down to about 90% effectiveness at 1 hour. Which means if you want 100% effectiveness, you have to go much less than an hour. Which is what I told you. There is a very narrow window. So they're estimating the basically the half-life for, what's your window at being somewhere like the middle of that window being about 0.6 hours, which is what, 2/3 of an hour, which is about 40 minutes. I think that because of the way they did this, only looking in hour increments and with no points between 0 and 1 hour, I think it's actually a little narrower than they make out in here. But yeah, very narrow, very early if you want to use those entry inhibitors. But you've got all of these entry inhibitors listed down here. So you got some that bind to CD4, if you were curious. Some that bind to CCR5, like there's our Maraviroc. And you've got some that are fusion inhibitors, like enfuvirtide, the HR2 inhibitor. Then you've got, so what's the window for reverse transcription? And so it's going to start somewhere around, let's see. Looks like it'll still be fully effective from time 0, and your half-life is sometime around 8 hours. And so they're calculating the midpoint at about 5.5 hours. So you've got a slightly larger window, but still, you got to be there early because reverse transcriptase does all of its stuff on the way in. And then all that transcription is going to be done by host RNA polymerase 2 on the way back out. So yeah, there's no way to inhibit host RNA polymerase 2 without shutting off every messenger RNA production in every cell. Yeah, frankly, that's insane. Yeah, that you would even think to do that. All right. Next one, integrase inhibitor. Now, these are interesting because you've got a long window here where they can be effective. So we think somewhere around 13 hours. And so this would be dependent on how long it takes to finish the reverse transcription step, and then how long it takes to get through into the nucleus, and then how long it sits there before it fully detaches, and then how long the integrase process takes. And you could inhibit right up through that point. And so, yeah, you get a much wider window here. And so that's why, generally, if you're looking at a cocktail, antiretroviral therapy cocktail, it is going to have an integrase inhibitor. It's just such a wide window, and yeah, it's got actually a decent slope to it. So it's not just like if you miss it by a minute, it's over. You missed it. You got time in which this can still have an effect. And then the last things, you can put in actual transcription inhibitors. Now these are trying to aim at transcription of viral RNA from viral provirus, cDNA. And so this is a strategy that is at least being tried. I am not aware that any of these is actually widely used yet. I think these are just potentially promising ideas at the moment. But then, yeah, there you got your Beviramat, and this is in the assembly stage. So it's going to interact with those GAGs and just mess up GAG interactions and GAG cleavage later on. It'll kind of mess up virus maturation. And then the last thing is your protease window. And your protease window would be basically after all these other things. And so you could still get good effectiveness anytime after the virus has come out and before it goes into the next cell. So the concept in making a good antiviral cocktail is that you want to hit perhaps different enzymes of the virus or proteins of the virus, and you want to give some coverage at different points in the viral replication cycle. So if you only went in with reverse transcriptase inhibitors like we used to do, once one of those viruses got through and managed to integrate, essentially you're doing nothing now. You're just poisoning the host, like low intensity poisoning. Yeah, because reverse transcriptase has done everything it needs to do, and from this point the person's infected, and all you're going to do is slow down infection of other cells. But yeah, not until the virus is already inside other cells. So yeah, really rough. Yeah. And so you'll often see something like an entry inhibitor with a reverse transcriptase inhibitor with an integrase inhibitor, or RT integrase and one of these protease inhibitors to come in at the end. Yeah. Just because they give some protection against different time points in the virus replication cycle. And remember, it's not like every virus is moving at exactly the same speed. So HIV gets in, and then every couple of seconds it's going to make a transcript. Some of those get through, some of those don't. And so you're going to have little HIV transcripts, and you'll have one virus exiting now, and then another in 5 minutes, and another in 10 minutes, and another in an hour. And that cell is infected for as long as that cell is alive. So it's kind of a constant stream. And so you never know after the first infection, you never know when, like what stage you're in. Because basically, some virus is potentially in every stage at every time. And so having an antiviral cocktail that sort of covers all the virus stages at least makes some logical sense. Yeah, there's not a ton of work on exactly which things need to go together or shouldn't go together, sort of conceptually. I don't know that we have a very good plan for that. But we know that a lot of different combinations seem to work pretty well. So looks like there are definitely options. Last thing, and I'll rewind this one slide, is that here you go from monotherapy. So at this point we were generally only using one drug at a time. And when these others were approved, these were approved and used in people who were already AZT resistant or had virus that was already AZT resistant. But not long after we had 2 drugs, we started to do dual therapy, because why not hit the virus twice as hard? See if, see if we can. See if that's going to have a good effect. And then once we had, I don't know, a couple more drugs, including drugs of different classes, we could then go in and generally the standard has been triple therapy, although occasionally we do 4-drug therapy. The old name for the triple drug combination was highly active antiretroviral therapy, or HAART. If you're reading an old paper and it mentions HAART, that's what they're talking about. So there you go. Now consider, I would say, how could we apply this strategy to other viruses? I mean, step 1, we would need more than one inhibitor of more than one type, right? Ideally, that would act at a different point in the virus replication cycle. And then we would need to make sure that resistance to one inhibitor doesn't automatically give you resistance to the other inhibitor, like is the case with NNRTIs, non-nucleoside RT inhibitors. And then as long as you had some kind of synergistic or at least additive effect, and resistance to one didn't mean resistance to all, you would have the basis for going from monotherapy to dual therapy to multiple drug therapy. And so, we're in the process of seeing this happen with a number of other viruses. And we'll get to some of these viruses later on in the course. But I just want you to keep at the back of your mind when we're talking about antivirals, remember that no one antiviral is ever going to do the job completely, because resistance always develops. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing we have to live with, plan for, plan around, and work around. Yeah. So, it takes longer periods of time to actually develop workable long-term therapies, just because you have to get multiple things that are absolute knockouts, work really well, and you tend to get these one at a time. So there you go. I thought that was interesting. You can think whatever you like, because hey, you're the customer, and oh my gosh, the customer is always right until exam time. Then the customer is at least sometimes right? All right, see you later.